Jon Draper.
Present.
Tal Rancourt. Pam Brewer.
Here.
Jack Hornley.
Here.
Sorry, Jack Comley.
Okay, thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes and the agenda all in one if we could.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and properly seconded. Would you poll the board, please?
Pam Brewer, so that's one. And that's two.
Jon Draper moved and Pam Brewer seconded.
He was in training, so. Okay, now you're gonna do a roll call vote? Start here. Start with one.
Jon Draper.
Here.
Yes.
Pam Brewer.
Yes.
Matt Elliott.
Yes.
Jack Comley.
Yes. I'll make sure.
Thank you. Motion carries. All right, Utility Director's report and grant updates, please. Mr. Kevin.
Yes, you got an abbreviated, I got the director's report done this morning. I spent the holidays with the flu and then a respiratory infection, so yesterday was my first day back at work. So we won't have as in-depth discussion as I wanted this month. We'll postpone part of the capacity allocation. We talked briefly about it last month, but it's not a time-sensitive issue, so we will talk about that next month. But we'll just go over it through the director's report a little bit, and then Dennis has a little slideshow that we had promised you about where the construction is, so we'll show you that in a few minutes. But you'll see in Dennis's slideshow some of where the construction's at. The 255 diameter clarifier tanks are about 50% complete. The tanks themselves are up out of the ground more than that for the concrete work, but then you got all the steel infrastructure that goes inside the troughs, the turntables, the other part of the interior construction. So the tanks themselves are, like I said, the concrete's 90%. So they've come out of the ground pretty quick, and you'll see that structure on the slideshow. Once those are complete, then they can backfill that area and then start on the two large carousel, 500,000 gallon carousel tanks, which will be the next part of the construction. While they're doing that, they're also doing the electrical duct banks, and again, you'll see pictures of that. So we'll kind of go through that in a little bit. The LPC3 water main loan application, that documentation, the bulk service agreement is going back and forth between our attorney and the Camp and Conference Center. So that's not on this, that was going to be on this agenda for approval and the council agenda for approval, but that's going into February for the bulk service agreement. They're slightly different than the wastewater one was, so they're just ironing out, making sure all the language is in track for it's how the grant gets paid. So it's very similar to the wastewater one that's already been done and approved, but as things drag on, that's got postponed, so that'll be a little bit longer before we actually are ready to go out to bid for the water main at the Camp and Conference Center. Main Street Merquatta projects, we talked about that. That bid opening came in pretty much while we were at the last meeting. Those bids came in at roughly double what the Camp and Conference Center lift station bid was, so we ended up having to pull all of the force main work out of that and award just the two lift stations. So the Merquatta lift station will get constructed and the Main Street lift station will get constructed, and then we will have to get additional funding for the force mains to connect those two force mains. It's okay in the interim for now. It doesn't prevent the Camp and Conference Center from coming online. It doesn't prevent the South Plant from coming online. It will prevent some of the future septic to sewer conversions. So we will have to look at that project as part of our next grant funding cycle to get the force mains connected between Merquatta Main Street and then the plant. Now, that's all conditional on how much money we use for change orders in the construction. We've got $1.5 million sitting there in contingency for the main plant. So if we get through most of the construction, we have that money available, we feel comfortable we have that money available, then we'll be able to move forward and do part of these other projects. So that's just that's going to be something that's going to be decided close to a year from now, as to where that money's going, and we'll know about any major change orders well before then, or as they get into that construction piece of it. So the south plant, we bid, we had to get that awarded before, so we allocated all the money. So all of the $40 million is now allocated for the, that $40 million grant had to be allocated by December 31st. We have till the summer of 2026 to spend it, but we had to have all the money allocated, or obligated is the correct term. So we will close the south plant and do that force main tie-in to the force main that was built for the Camp and Conference Center, so that project will move forward. And then that still leaves us the Tomoka wastewater plant and that force main that will have to, again, be part of, that had to get postponed because we didn't have enough money, and that'll be part of the next grant funding cycle, contingent upon council your approval and council approval. I'll bring that back next month with some recommendations of and discussion points of what we apply for next. And so there will be, I believe it's May is the next round of DEP grant cycle that comes into play. So we'll need to be ready for that. So that'll be part of next month's discussion and asking for recommendations on that one. The final walkthrough for the pipe bursting project is scheduled, I believe, for tomorrow. Is that correct? I think, anyway, in the next couple of days with Killebrew, that's the project along Interlake. The county has to be involved in that one. There was still some work at Main Street and Interlake as far as the paving and the loop goes for the light, the traffic signal that was cut. So, but they're 99% complete with that project. So, just as a side note, it really won't affect us, but it will affect, there was a jogger that tripped over some caution tape in the construction area, ended up going to the hospital, is now suing the town, which will go under Killebrew's. It's their project, it was their caution tape, it's their work zone, so it'll go under their insurance. So, but we are being sued for that. The caution tape was not tied across the sidewalk. It was obvious, and it was dragging, and they have video of it. But he tried to jump over it, step over it, I guess. His foot got caught up in it. He face planted in the sidewalk, and so anyway, but that will be under Killebrew's insurance, not the town's. So,
Other than that, Kevin, how was the rest of the project? Any hiccups?
we had a number of hiccups in that project because we did not have good as-built for the line that was under Interlake, the existing line. So we had lines that tied in that we didn't know about. We ended up adding 5 valves, I believe, as we got in to partially, so we prevented cutting off part of the town. We had the town-wide outage where we added 3 valves. We ended up going back in and adding a couple more, partly because those lines weren't on any drawings, the tie-in, so once we did that line, we had to replace the valve. So 5, I guess 6, I guess the total was 7. We did a couple of on our own while we were in there, so we had better control in some of the alleys. So I think it went better than I expected, quite honestly. We were expected that we would have some, because the line is fairly shallow, 3 to 4 foot deep, that once they started doing that pipe bursting and busted apart the old pipe, that we might have some rise in the asphalt in some areas, additional asphalt that we were going to have to replace, and that didn't happen. So we were happy about that. Like I said, it was particularly for the staff, that was our staff that was working overnight, the 2 months of night work that they did, shutting off sections of town, and poor councilwoman, oh God, my mind just went blank. Eddie Worley, that happened to live on that street, that had outages most of those nights. on hers. She was literally one of the only houses on that street because we had everything isolated back on the alleys and stuff. But as they did the blocks, we would have to shut off a block at a time. And as we got, initially we had to shut off the whole system, and then as we replaced valves, we could move up and shut off less and less of it. But Councilman Worley got the brunt of the disconnects. But I think overall it was a very good project. First time I was involved in a pipe bursting project. So we will be looking at the next CDBG grant and doing the pieces that we had to cut back because of the pricing. So there's still a piece that goes across 621 back towards pipe tractor supply. There's a piece down Main Street that we need to do. That'll be the pieces that we cut out. So that'll be the next application for the CDBG grant cycle. Those grants are limited at $700,000. So even though this project was just over $1 million, we spent $300,000 of our funds, of our infrastructure fund money, so that we could do all of Interlake. So we did from Main Street to the highway, but we had to cut out the section along Main Street and then down to Devane Park. So that's still a future project. But if we had done it conventionally, we would have dug up all of the parking spaces all the way down Interlake and disrupted all of the businesses for months, a couple of months at a time, and it would have been a real mess. So much better way to do it, and I think overall it was a good project. Like I said, any infrastructure project you're doing down the main part of town, there were challenges, but I think overall it went pretty well. But if you notice that the plantings have not been put back in, we basically traded our valves for the planting dollars. So the utility is still funding that planting, but the Keep Lake Placid Beautiful and CRA is looking at changing what was there, so we didn't put back in what was exactly back the way it would have been, because they want to change some of that planting, so we just have the irrigation stubbed up. And as they decide what they want to plant in those planters or in those islands, then they'll tie that irrigation back in so it irrigates that area appropriately. So right now we're just stubbed up, and then they'll just tie that back in as they move forward and decide what to do with those irrigation islands and the tree replacements and some of that. So.
Is that reuse water?
No, that is we have 3 wells. One up on Magnolia, North Magnolia, one in Stewart Park, and then one on Main. So eventually, with the new plant coming online, we'll be able to tie in. We'll have a lot more reuse water available, and we'll be able to tie those systems in to reuse. Currently, the reuse is all used along the highway down the medians. That will also tie into, we're getting a $1.5 million landscaping grant from DOT. So once they're finished with the Dow Hall intersection, the concrete intersection that they're about to do at Dow Hall, and then the other changes in the medians and things, they will come back in and redo a lot of the landscaping and extend that landscaping further out along the town limits. And so we'll extend that reuse lines and redo some of those reuse lines. So we use more of that. We should be able to pick up down Interlake and pick up some of that on reuse addition as well.
One other thing on the as-bills, are we looking at getting our as-bills recorded so we won't go through that again?
Yes, all of the as-bills will be coming in from the surveyor as CAD files, and so Dennis will be incorporating those into our Diamond Maps system. He's already taken some of the DOT survey information along the highway and stuff, and is already putting that survey information, converting it into Diamond Maps. So that's a huge benefit to have that capability in-house. So, and so yes, the maps are going to drastically improve as we move forward.
I have a couple questions. The street paving on the street just east of Caulfield hardware store, was that part of the water main replacement?
I believe that's Oak that's back
Oak,
there.
yeah,
We
I
did
think it's
that
Oak,
part
yes.
of that was part of the CRA, just infrastructure. It was actually done before before that project. It wasn't part of the pipe bursting.
Okay.
That was just part of that overlay that right there next to that mural was in really bad shape, so that little piece in there. Now, they had to redo the intersection. Where they dug up part of it at the intersections, that street paving, that little piece where it crosses the intersection, there to the north of the sidewalks
Okay.
is basically where where they had to do some patching and overlay.
Okay, that's what I was wondering about. Basically, we've got a patch on brand-new paving practically.
Yes.
Well, that's why. Okay.
Yes, and there's some mid-block areas where they did the pools. Their pools were ranged from 150 feet to maybe 250, 300 feet at a time. So there were some mid-block patches in there where they had to dig out. They would make that pool, tie it back in overnight, and then the next night would go back in, dig it back out, make the next pool, or depending on whether it fell in a weekend or something. So
Okay, and you might have answered this, I'm not sure. The pump station bid that came in on December 23rd,
yes,
what was the price on that? Was that double what was expected to?
that was
or-
actually, it's a much smaller lift station, so that the South Plant lift station pumps is set up to pump about 40 or 50,000 gallons a day, not a couple 100,000 gallons a day. It's a much smaller lift station. It actually came in below the engineer's estimate, which was the only thing that's in this whole
So far.
project that's come in anywhere
Yeah.
near that. So we had the same two bids, KDL and Go Underground. KDL was the low bid on that one, so KDL will be building all three of the lift stations and doing that force main work along Lake Mirror Drive. So that one actually came in at just over $1 million. We have a couple of change orders that we have to review, addendums, that will reduce that price by about $90,000.
Okay,
But we need to review their alternative offering just to be sure, particularly the panel. The pumps are no question, no-brainer. We're using, instead of flanged stainless steel risers inside the lift station, we're going to use HDPE pipe. So it's been used a number of places. There are some counties that won't allow anything but HDPE, so you eliminate any of the rusting and corrosion issues inside the lift station. So that's a $12,000 deduction. The pump and panel is an $80,000 deduction, but we have to be sure that the panels are covering with what was spec'd. So we have to do that review with the engineer before we approve those deductions. So those will be deductive change orders in that.
all
in
right,
that
just
piece
one
of it.
more thing. The new utilities director, Bert Warner,
Bert Warner, yep.
can you give us a little bit of a rundown on him?
Oh,
or-
sure, yes. So he'll start on the 21st. He'll be at your next meeting. He spent 30 years in Michigan in the utilities department. He spent the last 6 or 7 at Longboat Key here in Florida as their utilities director in Longboat Key. He left there for a short time, went to Hardy County, was there about 6 months, but his wife had medical issues, so he had to leave Hardy County, go back. Longboat Key hired him back so that he could take care of his wife. He had to be home quite a bit on that one. And then he's retired from there. So they got a replacement, and his wife has since passed. But anyway, so he's a little bit younger than I am, and but has 36, 37 years of utility experience. So I think he'll be a good fit walking in. He's familiar with Diamond Maps. They used that at Longboat Key. So he's familiar with that. He'll walk in. We've already done tours of the plants and the lift stations now. Longboat Key does not have water plant or wastewater plant. They buy from Sarasota County, so his was a distribution system. So it'll be a little bit different here when we have currently 4 water plants and 3 wastewater plants. But we have the operators that are licensed and take care of those. So I think he'll step in pretty quick, and we'll get him up to speed on all the,
Okay, thank you.
yep. So before we do the slideshow, just the capacity allocation I talked about briefly. That is just for discussion for next month. I'll send something out, and also grant the next grant application. So you'll have some recommendations to look at. It'll, quite honestly, it'll be get Tomoka finished in that force main, probably pick up Lake June Hills along with that. So we pick up Lake June Hills, and all that as a package, and the 2 force mains connecting those will probably be the recommendation. We'll have some costs put together based on the engineer's estimate and based on these most recent bids. So we hopefully will be fairly accurate in those costs, but we'll have some things for you to look at and make recommendations to the council as kind of a priority list of what you would like to see as the next projects for grant applications, because we'll be rotating back and forth. I'm not sure if federal earmarks run annually or every other year, but we'll have the federal earmark and the DEP grant application. So, you know, we got the federal earmark of $2.5 million. It's approved. We don't have any paperwork on it yet. So I don't know when we'll get paperwork from EPA. I don't know when that project will start. Probably won't even start before we'll be applying for the next one. So, but the utility board and the council needs to set a priority list of what we do for those which projects we do. And then also kind of just ties in on the capacity allocation of how much capacity we allocate out of that new plant for septic to sewer. And so that's kind of I'll have a recommendation just to, kind of off the pants, what do we have now compared to what do we have then? So we make sure DEP funded a $34 million wastewater plant with the idea of septic to sewer conversions. So what do we allocate? How much of that capacity of that new plant is allocated for septic to sewer conversions? And how much do we maintain so that we allow new development or infill development even? So, if somebody wants to build a house in town that's not a septic to sewer, what is that capacity that you reserve for that, and what does that look like? So that'll be anticipate the February discussion being a little bit longer meeting as you kind of think about what you would like to see there and recommendation to the council, and then the council will have those discussions as to how they want to move forward in the different projects. So as it stands today, I'll still be around working, doing some project management. That's still how that is absolutely going to function is still up in the air, but so you'll still be seeing me at least for a while. And let me pull up. So
Give me the PowerPoint at the bottom.
there we go.
Click on from the beginning.
Yeah, it's there. Right. So I don't know if your screens on the bottom? Oh, let's turn your screens on. You don't have to try and turn your head.
Sign, okay. Thank you.
It went bye-bye.
Yeah, I took your picture.
Well, that's really weird.
I lost my signal.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, because it's. For some reason.
It's showing there. It's not showing
This is the main one. That's why it's having an issue. That's having an issue.
For some reason, I'm good.
Yeah, she just unplugged.
Okay.
That one, it was just like, one,
Here we go.
Dennis Murray, town engineer. I've been out on site about 4 days a week, depending on what I got going on. So we begin with kind of an overview of where we started and cover sheet of the plans. And the first slide on the left, you'll see.
You want to go down?
Yep.
Okay.
That's kind of before we started, some of the equipment that's being used, and as you see, it's a big hole. So some big excavators and some small earth movers. On the left, you'll see the ribs. That's back in September, and then this is just northeast of the existing reclaim lift station we got.
Hold on 1 second. So just a rib is a rapid inflow basin. So that's basically the clay field that you see. That's what's called a rib. So that's the drainage pond for the effluent from the plant. That's where it goes into, just so you, anyway, okay.
Yep, so we're starting the construction of the clarifiers on the right-hand side, or now on the left. So it's a giant hole because they've got to maintain clearance around the walls, and you'll see why. But on the right, you'll see these little earth movers, and they're really cool. And they're quite efficient. So we'll start with the base and the foundation or the floors of the clarifiers, and you can see it's just a giant, huge hole with a circle. And on the right-hand side, you'll see some of the proprietary equipment that CROM has brought on site. CROM is the manufacturer of these tanks, and it's pre-stressed concrete tank. And you'll see in a few slides this equipment in detail. Let's see.
Just
next.
quick note. So back here is in the previous slide is a couple back.
Yep.
So this lift station is the reuse lift station that pumps into the system that they're maintaining, and this is the retaining wall that they had to put the shear wall to keep that lift station in place. That's sheet piles. That's sheet piles to keep that lift station in place while they're doing the tanks. So anyway, 55-foot diameter tank, so you can see, and then in the center of that is where the underground drains come, and then they have the piping that comes out. Those are encased in concrete.
Yep.
So
You'll see a close-up on the left-hand side, and then on the right, you'll see some handholds for the electrical conduit banks. Here's a close-up of the equipment used to place the shotcrete around the clarifier walls. So these are almost like giant elevators, and you'll see in a few minutes they rotate around like a spray head, and they go up and down spraying concrete on the outside of the pre-stressed walls. On the left, you'll see the south clarifier. On the right, you'll see the north. And that's kind of the floors before they place the concrete. Here's some of the headworks RCP pipe on the left. And on the right, you can kind of see a sense of scale. The gentleman working in the inside, they're keying the pipe. And so they got a giant fan to blow the dust. Here's a really cool photo as they were placing the concrete. I got a ready-mix truck with the rainbow. So that's cool.
it's actually Skittles going in there.
Yep. And it says U.S. American on it, so, you know,
Double rainbow.
God bless America. This is a cool photo, kind of combined them as a panoramic, but you can see the erection of the walls once they got the floor down. It's kind of a skeleton. And this is those handholds. This is the electrical conduit bank that connects them together. I just shared this because you could see the amount of data and stuff that we've got going on, so it's quite impressive.
And they actually, those are all get poured concrete around them, so you don't have anybody cutting electrical lines once you get them all in. So all of that, those duct banks that were in the previous picture, those are about 5x5 manholes, so all the wiring will come in and run through these duct banks once they're poured in concrete. So.
And we can see the erection of the walls. This is kind of, again, like a panoramic, the south and the north. But this happened within days. I mean, those walls were up and then wrapped in steel. And then as quick as they did that, they started with their elevator and getting that center rotating piece. And what that does is it brings water, air, and concrete into the gun of the gentleman going up and down on the elevator. Yes, so there's the south on the left and the north on the right.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
It's bouncing. So he had mentioned the pivot point. So in the center of that tank is the pivot point, and then the vehicle drives around on that fixed pivot point, around and around the tank.
Going up and down.
And this is the elevator that you'll see in the video that he took, but this is the piece that goes up and down and sprays the shotcrete on these tanks as they drive around 100 times a day.
They do an inside and outside at the same time?
No. They've done the outside, now they're doing the inside this week.
That's like a gunite process, right?
Yes, sir. Yep. I think we're almost at the video.
Okay.
Wait, let's see.
Yeah, here's the video.
Okay.
Got no sound.
Mhm.
That is neat, but you can see the elevator going up and down as they move this, and it really drives around just drives around and sprays the shotcrete up, and then they have a wire wrap that goes along with that as they build the walls out.
And those guys are operating it with a pneumatic-powered, custom-made pneumatic drive system.
Is
don't know
is
how-
it like GPS controlled to make sure that they have the same diameter?
No, there's 4 guys driving it. So they've got one on each side and then 2 safety guys on the side. And then you got 2 guys inside the elevator shaft. And then you've got the main super watching everybody. So each guy is controlling the 2 tires, and then they've got to maintain a certain distance, and then they try to get a thickness as they go up and down and go around.
Is it monolithic?
Say that
Once you start, you gotta finish? Is it monolithic?
Yeah, what'll happen is concrete will get caught up in that hose going from the pivot point and all the little pinch points. So you got to get the concrete out of the truck fast. You got to get it shot. They can't sit around.
So, no, but I think your question is, no, they will spray, because those walls are a foot plus thick. They'll spray a day, they'll spray, it'll dry, they'll come back and they'll spray. It's a multiple day process
Yeah.
on each tank.
I think it's
As
2
they come
coat.
through.
Was that the question?
I'm sorry?
I said those walls are about a foot thick. They don't spray the entire thickness in one day. It's a multiple day process as they coat it. The floors is a monolithic pour that you saw when they did that. That's a regular concrete pour. And then the rebar extends out from the floor, and they tie these walls in, are actually below the floor level, and then they bring them up for the entire process. So both of those tanks are, like I said, the shotcrete is almost complete, or is complete, I believe, on them.
And why is this better than, say, putting another band around it and pouring it?
It's a cheaper, you have
Okay.
less seams, so you don't have a seam in there. It's similar to the way a swimming pool is constructed, but it eliminates the seams that you would have if you're doing a pour, and then you're doing another pour on top of that, another pour on top of that. So
So is that like pea gravel in that mix? Is it, or is
it's
it just no aggregate
it's
at all?
called shotcrete, so it's a lightweight concrete. It's air injected, so it gives them ability to literally spray it on. And so I don't know that it's really a gravel in it, but I don't know what the mix is. I've seen them I watched them do the tank in Clewiston, watched them do a couple of swimming pools, my swimming pool and my son's
Closely
swimming pool.
seen
But CROM is a bunch of University of Florida engineers. They patented this
Right.
design years ago. But it's still they do have competition now on the similar type project. But we actually, when the bids came in, we expected this to be a higher cost than the tilt-up, more standard type of construction, but it actually came in below those other costs. So it was actually the cheaper alternative, and from an engineer standpoint, the preferred alternative. So we get lucky on that one, I guess.
I've seen like the 3D printing of buildings, so that's why I asked if it was GPS controlled, and that, it just would go.
Yes. Now, they're tied into that pivot point in the center, so they're tied in. They just got to make
Okay,
sure they
so
don't
that gives their
stress.
distance.
Yeah, they got to
Okay.
make sure they don't stress the machine from the distance from the top to the bottom, and keep that and keep that set. So, but I imagine they will be able to move to a GPS controlled very soon. Interesting side note, all of U.S. Sugar's cane harvesters are GPS controlled. The driver only, he drives them to the starting point of the field,
Yeah,
and then he doesn't touch it while it harvests the
Yeah.
field.
yeah.
They have Wi-Fi across their 140,000 acres, and they said the system paid for itself and increased production in 1 year. So just a complete side note about where GPS has
Yeah, neat stuff.
gone to. So that's it. That's where construction is at the moment. Like I said, I expect, I wouldn't, we had conflicting meetings today, so I don't know, did they say when they're going to expect us to start backfilling? Did they talk about that today?
Yep, end of January.
Okay, so end of January, they'll be backfilling, and then they'll start on the carousel, the 500-gallon carousel tanks. Similar project process, but it'll be a little bit different because you got the straight walls instead of the, so it'll be interesting to see how they make the oval, but they'll start those, I guess, in February.
Who's doing the QC on it?
Pannoni.
Okay, so they come in, do
They have a guy on site between Dennis and Eduardo Silva. I don't remember his last name. Eduardo, they have a guy that's on site. Between the two of them, they're on site every day. So we have somebody there that's, particularly during concrete pours.
So it's going to be oval shaped on top and round on the bottom?
No, this is a round tank. This is a 50-foot diameter round tank. The 500-gallon carousels are ovals. They look like a racetrack.
Gotcha.
And so that's, when you see it, it looks like a racetrack. So it's straight on the sides, and then on the ends it comes in and circulates through. So that's
And you put that oval water in the round water tank?
yeah.
Okay, all right.
So, like I said, that's kind of where we're at. We'll have Bert with us for the next meeting, and then we'll have like I said, some interesting discussions about moving forward and processes and which way we'll go. So
How's the schedule going?
this schedule is still, I believe, they're on track. So CROM was a little behind in where they could get started, but I believe they're pretty close to caught up, if not, and they will with the carousels. So
We're keeping track of building permits to make sure that we can still hit the dates with the permanent power and transformers and stuff like that. So we're watching some critical lead items, and with the holidays, not, we got a little behind with some of that. It's still all on track.
What's the in-service date? What's the in-service date?
January, I think 16th, but January of 2026. Next year. Yes, a year from now. A year from now. So I think right now the date is the 16th. They haven't requested any delay days. And so the critical items for this that have been a problem in other projects have been permanent power depending on the transformer. As Mr. Draper will know, some transformers are, and Ms. Eberhardt, who've been in the electrical business, some transformers are more than a year out, depending on what you're getting. They had those meetings with Duke when the project started this summer to make sure that that wasn't going to be a delay for the transformer and permanent power. They have a commitment from Duke that it will not be, so we believe that they have that either in their system already or on track to be delivered before that thing. The other very long lead time item is the electrical building, which houses all of the control panels, SCADA system for the entire thing. A company called Icon is producing a prefab building, and all of the equipment will be built into it will come with the equipment already installed, as opposed to the electrical contractor coming in and mounting each panel separately. Icon actually had made some changes in meetings with the engineers prior to bidding and eliminated 3 to 4 months off of that process, so we don't believe that that's going to be a problem. So those are the two major players in it. Everything else so far that we know of is on track as far as deliveries and critical items. The critical path items are on track, and so far we haven't had any delays. So,
Before they started spraying the Quickcrete, there was what looked like corrugated aluminum, corrugated metal panels there.
yep.
Is that, they, obviously they stay there, or what? They will be
They will be
encased
in
in
the center of the wall
Okay.
when
But
they're
really
when they're
not,
complete. Huh?
They're really there more for a form for they're not really adding any strength, structural strength to speak of.
Correct. They're there for something to spray the shotcrete to, and something for them to attach the rebar and the steel as they're bringing the material up. Yep. So that's all I've got. If anybody has any other questions or comments or desires or something you want to see, like I said, we'll have.
That building just plugs in with a USB right to those pipes, right?
Huh?
That building just plugs into the USB right there when you set it down,
Just a
right?
quick little plug, and everything will work remotely and be just about perfect.
Yeah, I really like that, because they can pre-test off-site and,
Yes.
get all the bugs out and everything. It's great.
Well, that will be a very nice thing. When we built the water plant, $22 million reverse osmosis plant, the SCADA contractor could not make the SCADA system work on site in the factory. We're supposed to have what they call a factory acceptance test. It did not work. We were on a hard deadline, so we installed it. They had to get it working while we were doing the project. We had their software engineers, Siemens, there on site for probably a solid month, working out all the bugs, but it was very nerve-wracking in that case, trying to make sure everything worked right. And so this one with the Icon building already prefabbed, everything wired in. It's literally, you got to bring the wires in from outside and terminate, but a lot of those issues, and space considerations and where things are going are eliminated up front. So it's we think it'll be a big help in the process. So we are still waiting, I believe, so we added some VFDs. It'll be a very minor change order, and I think we're still waiting on those numbers, but we added some VFDs, some existing blowers that are getting reused. But we're talking in the matter of $10,000 or $15,000, and that change order is what we expect to see. And we don't have those numbers yet, but we should have them hopefully next month. So that's so far that's the only change that we've had of any consequence. So.
Okay, all done. Anything else, Pam?
Oh, let me add in.
Yes, sir.
We did have, so this morning, we had a conference call on the Lake Placid Camp and Conference Center, wastewater and the lift station. That project is behind schedule substantially, and so, but they do have, we believe, a solution. Duke was on the line, the engineers, the design engineers go underground, their electrical. Duke is meeting with the electrical contractor tomorrow to try and determine how they're going to get power to the site, something that should have been done 4 months ago or better. They are still potentially 10 to 12 weeks out for permanent power. So, yeah. By next Friday, the lift station will be operational on a generator, so that we are under hard deadlines with DEP on their consent order for Camp and Conference Center and our grant, so that we don't have to do another extension or try to get through another extension with DEP. So we believe that DEP, we can certify the lift station. It's just a matter of swapping the power source after that point. That's no charge to us. That's on the contractor. And they should have done their homework a long time ago. They did not do that. They indicated back in early November, maybe October, that Duke was 6 weeks out, that they'd have it installed in early December, and that was not true, not the case. So they're meeting on site tomorrow. They'll determine how they're getting power, whether it's an overhead line or an underground line. I said the town doesn't care. Whichever one you're going to get done faster is to what we would like to see, and they will work that out tomorrow and we'll have an answer. But the system will be operational next Friday. Pressure testing is getting done on the force main. Panels should be set this week. They've got some final wiring and pumps to set, and the tie-in to the camp and conference center has already taken place. So they'll be able to start swapping over their buildings, but that's supposed to be complete next Friday. And then we will just be waiting on Duke to make their connection. So there's discussion whether it may be take several weeks off, go underground, could do a directional bore from the power line over to the lift station, and then provide those conduits, and then Duke's not having to do that work, so they could do that, provide those conduits, and it's just a matter of pulling the cable. Otherwise, Duke has 4 or 5 poles to set and tie into their primary, and then get the transformer set. But again, that's this has drug on a long time, but it will be operational next Friday. So
How are they gonna operate after a hurricane, for emergency? No backup generator or what?
there'll be a backup generator on site, yes.
So is the backup generator gonna be the temporary power?
The temporary power is not going to be our generator. So the generator was not part of the contract. We have a separate, we're working on the bid to get our generator that will be in place. They will bring in their own generator to supply it, and they'll supply the fuel. That cost is entirely on the electrical on the contractor. But we will have a backup generator on site. The 4 lift stations that we are installing or upgrading will all have permanent generators on site. The South Plant, this Lake Placid Camp and Conference Center, the Merquata, and the Main Street will all have permanent generators. None of them do today. Well, the South Plant does today. That generator can't be reused. It's the wrong voltage. So it's a 230.
What do you need, 480?
We need 277, 480. So this is a 230. Anyway. So they'll have a new generator. We can reuse that. We'll put that generator either in another site or on a trailer and use it as a portable. So it's actually a propane generator. So, but all of the new lift stations will have permanent generators on them.
Thank you.
So now that's all I got.
Okay. Anything else from anyone? Okay. Declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you.